In the early hours of the morning, Bayport police received a report about large amounts of blood found in Shadow Creek Alley. No victim was in sight. The caller assumed it was a drunken brawl gone wrong and urged the police to find the injured person quickly. Officers arrived to find the heavy rain had washed the blood into a chaotic mess. There were no signs of a victim nearby. A thorough search of the area led them to Riverside Millworks, an abandoned factory where they discovered dismembered body parts scattered across the floor. In the autopsy room, harsh fluorescent lights flickered on. "What's the situation with this case?" A calm, authoritative voice broke the silence as a woman in a crisp forensic uniform entered, followed by two young officers. It was Dr. Vanessa Sterling Hartman, my mother and the most respected forensic examiner in Bayport. One of the officers said hesitantly, "Dr. Hartman, the victim's condition is bad. Maybe you should prepare yourself." My mom waved them off. "I've seen everything there is to see. Let's start the autopsy and solve this case quickly." Indeed, my mother had seen it all in her two-decade career: decapitations, dismemberments, even bodies dissolved in cement. She was a consummate professional. "But Mom, have you ever considered that the body on your autopsy table might be the son you've always ignored?" Floating above, detached and invisible, I watched her work without emotion. When she unzipped the body bag, her brow furrowed deeply, not just because of the mangled remains, but because one critical part was missing. "Where's the head?" "We searched the entire factory," one officer stammered. "It's likely the suspects took it." "Fine, let's proceed." She donned gloves and began sorting the remains: bones, flesh, fragments of fingers. Each piece she identified was meticulously placed in order. "The victim is male. He's between 18 and 23, roughly 5'9" to 6 feet, based on the growth PL. Atesh. Likely a student," she narrated with clinical precision. "Judging by the condition of the cuts, the killers broke the victim's finger bones, radius, ulna, humerus, tibia, and femur while he was still alive. Then, they dismembered the limbs. It seems they weren't satisfied and used blunt tools. His ribs and vertebrae are almost entirely shattered." Her grim analysis left one of the young officers pale and trembling. He clutched his stomach, barely holding back nausea. The unimaginable pain and despair the victim endured hung heavy in the room. Mom turned suddenly. "Were any weapons found at the scene?" "Yes, these," the officer stammered, handing her photos of a rusted, blood-stained saw and a hammer caked in blood and flesh. The dull blade of the saw had been used to cut through every joint and bone. The pain it inflicted on a living person was beyond description. Mom frowned deeply. "This isn't random. What kind of grudge would drive someone to do this to a kid? Even Reve. NGE killings didn't usually escalate to this level of brutality." One of the officers responded respectfully, "Dr. Hartman, Detective Sam Boone's preliminary investigation ruled out robbery and random violence. This is a revenge killing. The team is cross-checking recent cases of missing persons citywide." "Good," she replied tersely. She resumed reconstructing the remains, hoping to uncover clues. But her efforts were in vain. Even dental records, often a surefire way to identify a victim, were useless because the suspects had taken the head. Identifying a person from such a pulverized, unclothed body seemed impossible. Floating nearby, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. At least Mom didn't know it was me. If she did, she'd only call me a disappointment one last time. With a heavy sigh, she muttered, "Poor kid. Whatever grudge they had with his family, why take it out on him?" For a brief moment, her eyes shimmered with tears. This was the Mom I didn't recognize. The meticulous forensic examiner piecing together every shard of bone. The compassionate woman feels for an unknown victim. It felt so foreign. I'd always known Mom didn't like me. I remember one rainy night when I was in elementary school. I had a fever, and Mom rushed me to the hospital, letting Dad, exhausted from days of overtime, rest at home. But she didn't know Dad got an urgent call not long after we left. He ran out without even grabbing his gear. That same night, he was killed in a shootout with a cartel kingpin. Mom was the one who handled Dad's autopsy. I was too young to understand death back then, but now I realize how traumatic that must have been for her. Maybe Mom blamed me. If I hadn't fallen ill that night, Dad might still be alive. Looking at her now, I couldn't blame her. Her focus was interrupted by a sudden ringtone. She stopped mid-motion, glaring at the two officers. "It's not us," they said quickly. Mom checked her phone. The call was from Rachel, my aunt. "I'm busy," Mom answered curtly. "Vanessa, do you know where Elijah is?" "His phone's off, and no one's seen him." "Elijah?" Mom frowned. "I don't know. I yelled at him yesterday. He's probably sulking in some gaming cafe. Leave him be." Rachel's voice grew concerned. "You yelled at him?" "Vanessa, he was so excited yesterday. His scores were good enough for the academy." "Academy? That boy needs to get a job in IT or something. Is he becoming a cop? That would be an insult to the profession." Her voice was as sharp as ever. Rachel hesitated momentarily before saying, "It's always been Elijah's dream. He worked so hard to get those scores. I even planned to celebrate with a big dinner. I bought so much seafood." Vanessa's anger flared. "I don't care. If he applies to that academy, he can forget about calling me his mother. He can go rot wherever he wants." She ended the call abruptly, her chest rising and falling in frustration as she stood over the autopsy table, silent for a long time. "I'm sorry, Mom. I won't apply to the academy. Please don't be mad. It's not worth your health." I wanted so badly to tell her that, but as a wandering spirit, I could only hover above and watch helplessly. I wanted to cry, but ghosts have no tears. By now, Mom had reassembled most of the body, but something was missing: 2 fingers from the right hand.